The trial of former fashion mogul Peter Nygard continues in Toronto. The 82-year-old is charged with 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 of forcible confinement. Now, yesterday, the court heard from the 5th of 5 complainants. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is outside the courthouse, and of course, a warning first for our viewers that you will hear some graphic descriptions that may be disturbing. Okay, so Megan, this woman was 21 at the time of the alleged assault. What did she have to say?
Yeah, most of the women in this trial, Arthi, say they were in their 20s when they were allegedly attacked by Peter Nygard. One of the accusers says she was 16 years old when Nygard raped her. These alleged offenses happened over the span of many years, the late 1980s to around 2005. And all now 5 women who have testified say they were attacked at Nygard's office building here in Toronto. His worldwide fashion empire was based in Winnipeg, but he had many offices, including here in Toronto, that had a built-in bedroom suite at that office building, and that is where the women say they were attacked. That's what we heard from this 5th accuser yesterday. She says it happened in 1989. She described how she initially met Peter Nygard at a social event at a well-known bar in Hull, Quebec. The woman was living in Ottawa at the time. She was an aspiring fashion designer, and she testified that Nygard offered to help her in her career and asked for her phone number, which she gave him. A while later, he got in touch with the woman and offered to fly her from Los Angeles, where she was on a work trip at the time, to Toronto to meet with him here and put her up in a hotel. She testified she thought this was a bit odd that he'd be willing to do this, given she had only met him for a couple of minutes at one point. But he was a successful, famous, worldwide known fashion designer, so she agreed and she flew here to Toronto. She testified that they met at a restaurant near the office building and he ordered oysters, and he went on to tell the woman that those were an aphrodisiac. And this is going to be a bit graphic. He said that eating oysters is like having a particular female body part in your mouth, that he started asking her questions of a sexual nature, including about her own sexual history, how many men she had slept with. She was 21 years old at the time and said she felt very uncomfortable with this conversation and kept trying to steer it back to the fashion business, but she testified that Nygard wasn't interested in answering her questions. They went to the office building. She testified that he led her to this bedroom suite, and it wasn't long before she alleges Nygard attacked her, pinning her down on the bed. She testified that she remembers thinking at the time, he's done this before. She said it was, quote, artful, the way he used his body to disable hers. She alleges he tore her clothes off, began sexually assaulting her, and she said she fought back as hard as she could. She testified she said stop and no at least 50 times, and she testified the more she resisted, the angrier he got, and that he began berating her, saying things like, why won't you let me do this to you? Don't you know how it works? Things of this nature. She testified while this was going on, there were television screens lining the bedroom wall that were all playing pornography. She testified that Nygard sexually assaulted her multiple times in multiple ways, and when it was over, he wouldn't let her out of the room. Entry and exit from the room was controlled by a code that had to be pushed into a control panel. There was no handle on the door. She said she felt like a prisoner in that room. She begged to be let out. Eventually, he relented, she said, because he got so annoyed with her that he finally let her go. More to the story, Arthi. We will continue to hear more of that story today in court as she continues her testimony, questioning from the Crown attorney. And when that's finished, Nygard's defense lawyer will cross-examine the woman. Nygard, who is in the courtroom, has pleaded not guilty to all 5 counts of sexual assault and the 1 count of forcible confinement.